Welcome to the workshop, Bylaws and Procedures, Navigating the Rules. My name is Jacqueline Wilson, and I'm the Leadership Training Specialist for New York State PTA. It is my hope that after viewing this PowerPoint, that you better understand the role that bylaws and procedures have in running your PTA. The chat box will be open, so please feel free to type in any questions you have. And once the presentation is finished, I will be on and available to answer any additional questions. So let's begin. What's the role of bylaws for your PTA? PTA bylaws describe the purpose of PTA and its mission, its policies and members' rights, as well as information about officers, committees, and their respective duties. Unit Council PTA bylaws are the approved set of bylaws signed and dated by the New York State PTA Bylaws Coordinator. They are valid for 3 years from the date that the New York Bylaws Coordinator approves them. And all units and councils need to check their bylaws to be sure you are in compliance. A copy of your bylaws for your PTA could be made available to any association member upon request. Bylaws help your PTA function in an orderly manner and include the following: member dues, what officers you have, what is the term of office, and when is the election? What is the makeup of the nominating committee? When does it report? What do you do if there's a vacancy in office? The role of the executive committee, the executive board, and committees, and the number of members for a quorum and information on meetings. Bylaws can have up to 3 amendments made during their current time. In order for a unit or council to be in good standing, the bylaws must be current. Insurance and membership payments must be made. Officer information must be filed in Member Hub. You may not have an IRS revocation, and you must have a current 990 filed with the IRS. If any one of these items are not in compliance, it could jeopardize your unit's ability to apply for national, state, and region awards and grants, as well as attendance at region and state events. Some examples where this has happened: we have a scholarship for students called the Jenkins Memorial Scholarship. If your unit puts forth a couple of names for the scholarship and your bylaws are out of date, your students may not be able to be considered for the scholarship. In addition, if you attend PTA convention and your bylaws are not current, you could certainly attend the convention, but you would not have a voting privilege. So those are just 2 of the examples of why your bylaws need to be current and in compliance. Here are the reference books we use for bylaws. And of course, Robert's Rules of Order is the parliamentary authority for New York State PTA. You see on the left here, Robert's Rules of Order in brief. And this is again a condensed version with major motions and major information. Then on the right, you have the current, most updated 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order. And this is just recently revised, just came out this year. Different color than we're used to. We're used to seeing the brown. This is kind of a tan color. And written by Henry M. Robert, he states this quote very, very importantly to us: where there is no law, but every man does what is right in his own eyes, there is the least of liberty. So if you think about that for a minute, without law, without rules, without agendas, without a meeting minutes, there is chaos at a meeting. So you can imagine if we did not have bylaws and procedures, how would you run your meetings orderly, and how would you get anything done? Additional bylaws notes to remember: every 3 years, they must be entered into the bylaws wizard, whether they're revised or not, and then they are voted on by the unit or council membership. Whether revised or not, they must be presented at a general membership meeting and approved by a 2/3 vote. Once approved by the membership, the original signed cover page must be mailed or emailed to the region bylaws chair. Without this cover page, your bylaws will not move forward for approval. Bylaws may not be suspended at any time, even by a majority vote of the association. They are always in effect if they are current. And for detailed information on how to complete your bylaws, go to the New York State website, click on the Leaders tab, and then click on Bylaws and Procedures. And this is what you will see on that page. You notice the arrow pointing to the Bylaws wizard. That is where you will begin the procedure of renewing or revising your bylaws. But in addition, there are lots of documents on this page that can assist you, such as steps to updating bylaws, bylaws wizard instructions, bylaws wizard amendment instructions, and information about your region bylaws chair, their contact information. So this is where you will find all of that information on the New York State webpage. In addition, there is another section on procedures where there are sample procedures for you to take a look at. So exactly why do we need procedures and what are they? Procedures are standing rules. They're a cumulative record of the association's experience and serve as a model for current and future officers and chairmen. Procedures complement bylaws by providing details not outlined in the bylaws. Both the bylaws and procedures provide for the authority administration of the affairs of your PTA. They are details of monthly PTA work that are adopted and may be amended at any regular meeting of the executive board by a majority vote of members present and voting with prior notice, or otherwise a 2/3 vote is needed. Additional procedures may be adopted by a majority vote, and they can be suspended for the duration of any session by a majority vote. An example of that, when I was region director, we could not find anyone to be the newsletter editor. So we decided that we would just suspend that procedure for that position and put the role in the hands of the recording secretary. And it was just a temporary thing. But we were able to do that because we did not want to be without a newsletter editor. So that's an example of how procedures may be suspended. Again, the New York State Resource Guide, Section 7, has a whole lot of information on procedures. They're described in detail and there are samples given. So if you don't have any idea, I refer you to the Resource Guide for information. Procedures for your association must conform to the bylaws. They cannot be in conflict with the bylaws. For example, all bylaws state that the chair of the nominating committee is elected by the committee. Your procedures cannot contradict this and state that the chair will be elected by the membership. So procedures have to conform to bylaws. They can't be in conflict with the bylaws. And the fact that they're developed and maintained by your unit or council makes them easier to develop or change as needed. They are your procedures for your unit or council. So, for example, how do bylaws and procedures work together? Nominating committee will state in the bylaws, the nominating committee states a number of members elected, from which part of the organization, when they are elected, and when the committee must report. So let's say you have one member from the executive board and 2 from the association, a total of 3, and the report must be made 2 weeks prior to the election. But that's all the bylaws will state. Well, the nominating committee has to meet. What do they do? How do they meet? Procedures will give details about the meeting, how the committee will do its job, exactly how the slate of officers is reported, and what is done at the election meeting. Details that will help the committee do its job properly. The procedures are to be considered a living document and reflect the work of the unit or council. An efficient way to keep procedures organized is in a loose leaf binder. Items can be edited easily, added, and copied. The president and secretary should always have updated copies at each meeting. In addition, all officers should have a complete copy of current procedures. And many units will give every member of their executive board a complete copy of the procedures. And again, because we can do this electronically, we're not making hundreds and hundreds of copies. That is an efficient way to give it to all your executive board members. Or you could choose to just give them part of their procedures that refers to their job, their role, or their committee. So how do we get started? If you do not have procedures, form a committee. Okay, form a committee to start your work. And this will be a multi-year process. Take your time because you want them to be thorough. To start with, each chair and officer currently can be asked to contribute information pertaining to their position. For example, you have 2 secretaries. You have a recording secretary, you have a corresponding secretary. What do each of the secretaries do? It's important to note, not only for them, but also when you're looking at jobs and positions and going to elect people, you need to know if the person that you want to elect to that position has the capability to do that position. And then as you move forward, any changes or additions can be brought to the executive board for approval at any executive board meeting. So as people change, as positions change, your procedures can reflect those changes. Why do you need procedures? Here's an example. Your unit is holding a plant sale, and the president appoints a chair to head the committee and asks for volunteers. The chair is a new person to the position and has no idea how to get started. You need to give the chair information, but no one seems to know what the company was used or how much was charged or even when it was held, etc. And you can never anticipate that everyone will agree on how things were done before. Remember, you have changes in leadership from year to year. You have changes in membership from year to year. And you can't rely on the fact that, oh, I think we did it this way, or I remember that way. If it's written down, you are now giving your plant sale committee and chair a roadmap to begin their work. So how much easier is that? Well, would you like to be the head of the plant sale? Yes. What do I do? Well, I'm not really sure. We'll have to talk about it. If you have procedures, then obviously there is no question about how that person will get started or that committee will begin its work. And as things go on, if things don't work out, if things get changed, the committee chair will come back with procedures that reflect what was done that year. It may be very much the same as what was done previously. It may have some differences, but that's why procedures are so important, because they allow everyone to have the information they need to do their job, whatever their role is, from officer down to committee member. And it's very, very important that we are able to do that so people know exactly where they're going and what they need to do. So how would we write some procedures for a bylaws committee? We need a bylaws committee. We know our bylaws are going to expire. And what do we do? How do we get started? So first thing to do is ask yourself some questions in order to create the procedures for the bylaws committee. How many members will you want on the committee? Who will be the chair? What is the charge? What exactly are they supposed to do? How do they get started? By what date will they need to complete their work? And when will they need to report to the executive board? All of these are just simple questions that can be put down in writing to create procedures for a bylaws committee. The first thing you would do is check your bylaws. How do I form a committee? According to your bylaws, it states that the president, in cooperation with the executive committee, appoints the committee chairs, including all special committee chairs. Bylaws are considered a special committee, appointed for a specific task. Okay, so there you have your beginning of your bylaws committee procedures. So here are some sample procedures for your bylaws committee. 3 members will be appointed by the executive committee. no less than 6 months prior to the expiration of the bylaws. The chair will be appointed by the president. So you know your bylaws expire January 1st. By June of the previous year, you will want to have a bylaws committee formed because it takes time to complete the process. Number 2, a copy of the current bylaws will be given to the committee. The committee needs something to start with. So obviously they need a copy of their current bylaws. Again, your region director or your region bylaws chair can assist you if you cannot find a current copy of your bylaws. The committee will look at the current bylaws and bring to the executive board potential revisions accompanied by a rationale for the changes. So let's say your dues are currently $5 and you realize that the $5 is not really covering a lot of the expenses that you need. So you believe that you should raise them to $7. And that's possible. A committee could look at that and say, we want to raise the dues to $7. But they should give a rationale for the change. Why are we changing it to $7? And then ultimately, the membership will have a say as to whether or not that is a good change. It's brought to the membership. They can talk about it. They can debate it. Maybe some will say, no, I think $6 is better. Some will say $8 may be better. But in the end, it is the membership's decision whether or not to go along with what the bylaws committee suggests. The committee must complete their work no less than 2 months prior to the expiration of the bylaws. There is a time frame here that needs to be considered. It's not a committee that works all year necessarily, although they could, but they do have deadlines because you have to make sure that your bylaws are available 30 days at least prior to your expiration, because the membership must be given 30 days notice of the meeting in which the bylaws will be reviewed and or revised. The chair will present the changes at a general membership meeting for discussion and approval no less than 30 days prior to the expiration of the current bylaws. Again, that's to be in compliance with what your bylaws say, that 30 days notice should be given for a vote on the bylaws to the general membership. And that's to give everybody a chance to look at the changes, if any, and talk about them and consider the rationales. And finally, the committee chair will be responsible for completing the bylaws using the bylaws wizard and submitting the signed and dated cover sheet to the region bylaws chair once they have been approved. This is an extremely important thing because the person who creates the bylaws on the wizard is the one who will receive the copy of the bylaws for review and ultimately the final copy. So it's important to assign a particular person to that job. And in this case, it could be the committee chair, it could be the secretary, it could be the president. But unless it's stated in procedures, what happens is the bylaws go through the wizard and then nobody remembers who was responsible for them. It's brought to the membership, but then nobody sends the signed cover sheet to the region bylaws chair, and all of a sudden it's past January 1st and your bylaws have expired. And now you are scrambling to get this done. So spelling it out in procedures is extremely important, and it allows for people to understand what needs to be done, to do things in a timely fashion, particularly when it comes to a bylaws committee, and to be sure that they're following the rules, okay? Navigating the rules. So any questions? The resource guide, as I mentioned, section 7, is where you will find all information on bylaws and procedures, and that is on the website. My information is there if you wish to contact me about any questions you might have about procedures, bylaws, anything at all. And we also have a number of webinars on our website that are available for viewing at any time. So I encourage you to take a look at some of them because we have a variety of topics and a lot of ways that you can have your questions answered. So I'll be available after the presentation if you have any additional questions. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.